Conditions and circumstances dictate our reality in many, many ways. Some of these circumstances are within our control, and others are beyond it. The key to coping with these sometimes stressful truths lies in one's interpretation of their circumstances. In other words, how and why meaning is assigned to your experiences. I believe an important factor to look at when trying to understand how someone else interprets reality is first understanding how they see the relationship between coincidence and destiny. No one is really alone when it comes to those moments where something unexpected, like a mistake, leads to things ending up better than anticipated. Some might call it coincidence, while others would argue there is no such thing. I find myself somewhere in the middle, but I think others can find themselves in one of the following 3 levels. The first of which I have labeled, things happen and only I can give them meaning. This way of thinking is actually quite liberating for those who are comfortable with the unknown. This position implies a non-attachment to why or how things happen, and instead places that focus on the individual's reaction, response, and attitude to determine the outcome. Everything happens for a reason is that second level. And in other words, it means things have a meaning I'm meant to uncover. This perspective invites a hint of magic. Under this belief, the world operates according to a hidden agenda, moving with a purpose unknown to us. Like level 1, those who find themselves in this category have to be comfortable with what they don't know, but they also have to trust. And it's not just trust in oneself, it's trust in the universe. The third level, not in any particular order of importance, just the third, is everything is fated and predestined. Here we can observe a loss of control. People with this more extreme stance wish to and/or feel more comfortable giving away some autonomy, some free will, in exchange for security. Maybe this view is the result of oppression or helplessness. And I say that because it's suggested by the surrender to higher powers that a pre-written world would require. I feel like the third level is somewhat fragile because what happens when things don't go the way you expected? If it's completely out of your control and you've put complete faith in something else, and it goes wrong, then all you're left with is blame, disappointment, and limited personal development. On the other hand, when life goes in your favor, it might be harder to accept it as your own accomplishment. There was no risk, and to me, that diminishes the reward. And aren't the best stories the ones in which a character takes destiny into their own hands, takes a risk, and even fails? All in all, believing in a fixed future doesn't leave a lot of space for introspection and accountability. It's just not as good of a story. I believe that free will and destiny are not opposites, but instead deeply intertwined in an inexplicably complex and magical way. One's free will is what guides their destiny. However, one cannot predict how unforeseen circumstances or even planned events will interact with their decisions, much less the decisions of other people that play a factor in how things turn out. The most memorable instance of fate taking hold of my life came in the 10th grade. At the time, like maybe many of you, my phone played a huge role in my life. I spent hours a day, every day on TikTok, and I really did await that notification from Be Real. Until my phone broke out of nowhere. One day I dropped it from my desk to the floor and the screen went black and green stripes. It was no big deal though. I took it to the store, got the screen replaced, and I thought that was it. Not even a week later, it broke again. My life was filled with black and green stripes for the second time. At that point, we took it to Best Buy, and we were told that it would be cheaper to get a new phone than it would to try to salvage what was left of this one. For several reasons, that didn't work out right away. So I spent a month off the grid, no phone whatsoever. And it was then that the world seemingly became brighter, louder. I felt like I was connected to everything around me, unlike ever before. I was no longer a part of the online world, but it didn't matter. I was completely content. Eventually, my mom got sick of this and said I would need a new phone as soon as possible. Something about her needing to reach me in case of emergencies. I was hesitant because I knew money would be an issue, and I honestly had no interest in going back to having the relationship I did with my phone before. But I found a way around both of these circumstances. My new phone would be a flip phone. And so my creative boom commenced. I started reading, writing, journaling, drawing, and the world just kept coming to life more and more every day. I fell in love with humanity. And so that was my modern transcendentalist journey. And it came about completely by accident. Unfortunately, the second part of the story isn't as poetic. It was actually pretty terrible. After a year and a half together, my phone broke. And worst of all, it was totally my fault. At that point, I did get a new phone, still didn't want to, but in some way or another, it was meant to be, because not even a week into this new phone, re-downloading Instagram, I was suggested to follow a boy who became my now boyfriend of the past 8 months. And this is just going to show how something unplanned and devastating created the perfect conditions for something special to come into my life. And it taught me that experience is a living thing that knows more about my path than I do myself. Though we have the power to reach certain goals, we often float blindly through a journey beyond what we initially envisioned. The interesting thing is, although situations that seem unusual and can feel isolating or too personal are equally a source of connection for people. When we go through things we think we are alone in, and then find someone who's been through something similar and can relate, a space for affinity is made. This allows us to recognize the unusual nature of all life, thus transcending the concepts of what is usual and unusual altogether. And it simultaneously fosters community. Within a community, there are cycles. On a global scale, we have generational cycles, and that same model can be scaled down to our school communities. By describing a community as cyclical, I mean to highlight shared experiences that take place in a sort of ripple, as in different people of different ages will experience the same things or similar things at different times. Like for me and all of you in high school, I remember what it was like being a freshman looking up to sophomores, a sophomore looking up to juniors, and maybe down on freshmen, a junior looking up to seniors, and now, as a senior, I've grown to understand the significance of this pattern. Having a group older than me who has gone through what I'm going through, and having a group younger than me facing what I already have, provides me with perspective. Seeing myself in other people, their experiences, their mindsets, allows me to introspect and be aware of my responsibility as someone older, guiding those around me just as I was guided before. This pattern also evokes what are known as full circle moments, the strange feeling of ending up where you were, parallel to your old self. It's almost like hiking to the top of a mountain and finally seeing the full picture. The view of the world beneath you, the path you walked to get there, all seemingly shrunken by the grandeur of it all. An example of this in my life happened at my Jewish summer camp, which, like many others, has a counselor and training program, which includes the CITs, 16 to 17-year-olds who are going into their senior year of high school, a CIT director, and advisors. My sister and I went to this camp, and she's 3 years older than I am. Her friends, who I hardly knew, were assigned to cabins, and one of them was obviously mine. At my camp, being a CIT is just about the coolest thing you can be. You're not quite a staff person, not really a camper anymore, So I got to know my CITs and idolize them a lot. Fast forward 3 years to this past summer. I was a CIT, and my sisters and her friends were my advisors. The same individuals I looked up to were now teaching me how to fill their shoes, and it made the whole experience more impactful on a new level because it had all come full circle. I'd like to finish with my author's purpose. If this moment, and every other moment that has ever been lived, is part of a story, then who's writing it? I like to think of myself as a co-writer. Not every scene was my idea, but I get to input my own plot twists here and there. It's no current event that art reflects life and life reflects art. But it is sort of crazy how stories people have been writing since the beginning of time all unfold in the same way life does. The analysis of these stories gives words to the patterns that take place in real life too. In a way, we write the same way the universe does. To me, it's really interesting to think about literary storytelling techniques and how they sometimes take place before our eyes. For example, sometimes when something shocking and usually undesirable happens, we can see in retrospect how other things, people's words, events, signs, or gut feelings hinted or foreshadowed the experience. Now let's dive a bit further into 2 ways that this phenomena affects its experiencers. The first is stress and anxiety. When we look back and see that they were signs that were premonitions of what was to come, we can feel stressed out that we're going to miss those signs again and be hesitant to try new things because what if the future holds something bad that we could have stopped, something we didn't see coming and wish we would avoid? The other option is when we look back and see that what was to come was coming, is it can heighten our intuition. We can see that learning to analyze our life like literature is also able to sharpen our understanding of the world and strengthen our trust in ourselves. So, I push you to enjoy your life like a good book, no matter the circumstances. Thank you.